I think perhaps the thing that gets me most excited is in freeing us up from the busy work, as you say, the data entry, the trawling through endless spreadsheets of data to try and figure out who your right audience segment is to target in the first place, to figure out what leads you should be prioritizing, what opportunities your sales team should be closing. AI can deliver that for you. And guess what that means? That means you get to spend more time thinking about all the creative ways to reach and to communicate with your target buyer. Who doesn't want to spend more time using your right brain as in marketing than trawling through oodles and oodles in a sea of data? I know I do. And that's what gets me excited.
Claire, it is so wonderful to have you here on Leadtail TV. Thank you so much for being here.
And Bryan, thanks so much for inviting me and the opportunity to come join and speak with you.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this because you're in the space that is near and dear to my heart, which is while it stands for customer relationship management, the most important word to me is relationship. And so I love what you do, what your base is. And I've been, studying a lot about your background and where you come from and what you're doing now. And I'm just excited to explore a little bit. So I'm going to get right into it. And I want to talk about something that's even relevant today. That's probably the most relevant thing today, which is about AI. Would love to ask you about how you think the rise of generative AI, like, Chat GPT. And if you haven't heard about that, you've been living under a rock.
You sure have.
and what do you think how do you think it impacts the way marketers approach their work and now and in the future?
I mean, it's such a hot topic, isn't it, Bryan? I think, not a day goes by that AI isn't part of my conversations with my team, with leadership, with sales, with my peers, with my husband. And, the way that I think about AI is it's very much a tool to help us, to help us get better, to help us do things that we previously haven't been able to do. I think of AI as affectionately as my co-pilot, as my wingman, if you will. So it's not a matter of, because I know there's a lot of fear and uncertainty out there about AI is coming, it's here, it's taking our jobs in marketing. What are we going to be left to do? What are we going to left to shoulder? And, I think of it as additive. It's much more of an and, not an or. And so I think AI just has huge potential. In our job, I've always felt, and one of the reasons why I gravitated, I think, to marketing was that I believe fundamentally that our job as a team is to embrace change. It's part of our core DNA. Whenever I recruit, I always ask lots of tough questions about how people handle change, because I think it's a core part of what we do. We look at the market, how that's changing. We look at competitive dynamics, how they're changing. We feed into product as a function in terms of how that needs to change. We're constantly looking at the ways in which our buyers and our prospect change. And AI to me is just another change, that isn't on the horizon anymore for us in marketing. It's very much here and now. And I want us as a core collective to think about how we seize that opportunity. So what I get most excited about, being really honest, when I think about the rise of AI, Bryan, is so long busy work. And hello, absolutely, the powerful combination of AI and humans, AI to help us uncover the insights, the connections, the understanding of how our prospects, our customers, our partners are behaving and what they need from us, in a way that previously would have been a complete science project, and would have taken us months and months to really uncover. AI is that powerful co-pilot to help us accelerate our content outlines, to identify those audience segments, those images to utilize, and frankly, just infinitely expedite our ability to deliver value, to the business and importantly, to our customers. But what I will say is that what we cannot afford to do as marketing is overlook not just the opportunity to embrace AI, but the opportunity to use AI in combination with your marketing team to stand out. And I know this is something you are really, really passionate about, about balancing people with technology, right? It's all about, it's never, your tone of voice, the way that you have conversations, the way that you use colloquial language, the way that you distill complex topics into simple themes and topics and overlay that onto your content so that you're telling a story like you're telling your friend at the bar. That's something that only humans can do. And so I think that the opportunity with AI lies in using it as your jumpstart. I talk a lot internally to my team about AI being our co-pilot and our best friend. But I don't believe, fundamentally that, the importance of originality and human opinion and human conversation and human interpretation is ever going to go away. And I think that's where I see the biggest opportunity with AI is brands that get that right. Because no denying, we're all in that experimentation phase with AI. Yes, the technology is maturing, but I already see to some degree frustration, with the use of AI out there. And so, like I say, for me, that creates opportunity, yes, to free us up to focus on the big strategic creative parts of marketing that, frankly, it's why we all do this job, or most of us do this job, perhaps apart from those in marketing arts. But, AI is taking us and forcing us into frontiers that we've never been in before as a marketing collective. And for me, like I keep saying, the balance is in how do you embrace the tech, but equally important, how do you utilize your super talented rockstar team of marketeers to not just embrace it, but empower them to do the things that they haven't been able to do before, whether that's, like I say, distilled human-like narratives, build human relationships with your buyers and your prospects, because at the end of the day, in the world of B2B, people buy from people.
Oh my God, you're my sister from another mother. I want to bottle you up and share you with the world. This is exactly, I feel like we are simpatico. And so I'm curious, when you look at all of everything that you just said, you're talking about, kind of like working together. You're looking at both human and technology working together, not an or, but an and. And when you look at that, where do you think is there a fine line yet? Or is there, or are we still in discovery mode in where that's at?
And I think we're very much in discovery mode. I mean, every day, I'm sure you, like I, get alerts about the latest and greatest tech, right? That's going to help us, get rid of the busy work, whether it's busy work around audience segmentation, whether it's busy work around insights about more likely to purchase what. And I think that we are, like most new tech that comes along, and you think about that hype cycle, we're in the excitement phase, where we are experimenting, trying to fine tune what that balance looks like. And, I'll be honest, I'm not sure any of us have got that right yet. It's too early on. It was only a year ago that ChatGPT exploded, and, my experience having been in marketing for 20 plus years is it takes a while for tech to really embed itself into your organization and for you to understand how best to use it side by side with your teams. And I don't think AI is any different in that regard. Those who aren't experimenting, And those who aren't embracing, what comes along with AI are going to get left behind. When I think about even just recruiting, and how the types of questions that we ask candidates that thankfully we're in growth mode, Bryan. I'm very keen to understand how much they know about AI and the power of AI, because it is the future. But I do think that we continue to try to find lines still. And I think part of that as well is because there's still inherently a question mark over trust and compliance, right? Can we trust the bot? Can we trust the tech? And I think the answer right now is probably not 100%. And I think we're all inherently fearful of what that means for our brands and our brand reputation. And so we dance that fine line between, like I said, experimentation, because it's the right thing for us to be doing. No one ever wants to spend months trying to understand insights about a segment, right? That can now be done in days, minutes, not months. But yeah, I think we're continuing to do that waltz back and forth of embracing it, but having a decent amount of fear is the wrong word, because I don't think we fear AI, but enough questions about how we continue to embed it into what we do, such that we aren't corroding any value that we've built over time with our business and our brand.
Man, beautiful. When I want to go into what you do and how you see it helping, because I think what you're getting at too is that it increases maybe speed to where we can get to what we can find. It's like almost finding that needle in the haystack that we've all been after as marketers. It was like 5-10 years ago where you would earn bonus points if you just use the word data, and now all of a sudden, or data, and now all of a sudden it's like you don't hear it as much anymore, because it's just part of knowing, like, if you don't know that, that's like table stakes. But now all of a sudden we've got this new potential at helping us to arrive to the answer faster, which is potentially personalizing things better or potentially doing other things. I'd love to know, and that's your world. How do you see, in what you're doing, that we can bring relationships closer together using this technology, or is it there yet? Is it something that you're looking forward to?
So, perhaps the best way to answer that question, Bryan, is sort of illustrating it with two very different examples. So, I think the power of AI has perhaps been best explored when it comes to content creation, right? And the quest to grab people's attention, with your narrative, your storytelling, and how you take that out to your core ideal customer profile, that's ever changing. And I think what AI, and specifically generative AI, has really allowed us to do there is to generate ideas and fast track the research phase, right? How often do others who write for a living find ourselves with creative block? You're sat there, you're frustrated, the new ideas aren't coming. And I don't know if you're like me, but you might go have a glass of wine or make yourself a cup of tea in the hope that might help inspire. Listen to some music. That's something else that I do. Well, here's the good news. Generative AI can now surface ideas and topics that can help stimulate your imagination, right? It can also help create that outline for your content. It can help you do, the keyword research, cluster, phrases that are relevant to what it is that you're writing about in a much less time-consuming way. But what it won't do is overlay that personality and that tone that is unique to Bryan, that is unique to Clare. What it can't do, what it can learn over time, is what's core to your brand DNA. But what it can't convey are the emotions and perhaps what the audience might have come to expect from Bryan and Clare's written piece. It's just not there yet, right? And it's that emotional connection with the content that, the humans bring to bear as we use AI in combination with our teams to produce. And I think it's that emotional connection with the reader that starts to establish that relationship, that engagement, and that trust. So I think there's one good example of where I feel, it's helping the relationship, but it's not going the whole hog. And the other example I will use to illustrate this is, if you think about, a customer loyalty program, Bryan, right? What AI and automation actually in combination can really help you do is build into your system systematic steps to communicate with those who you deem to be loyal to your brand. It can build in systematic communication. It can build in systematic discounts, rewards, reminder emails, moments in that life cycle for your customer where it's important to celebrate, surveys to bring that voice of the customer back into your organization to help you be better, serve better, understand more about what matters to your customers. Automation can handle so much. But what AI can do is predict who should be a part of that loyalty program. What should the next step be in that communication strategy? But when neither automation and AI goes the full mile, is to build those relationships through local events where you meet face-to-face with your customers and your prospects. Quite frankly, I could not be happier that in-person is back because I think that's such an important part of our go-to-market strategy as marketing teams. And it's at those moments in person where you get to understand somebody's psyche, you get to understand what makes them tick, you get to build that relationship face-to-face that no technology can replace. It can complement, it can help inform, but it can't replace. And so I think there are two really good examples of where the new technology and AI specifically is helping advance our efforts and helping us get to launching a loyalty program faster, producing content faster, smarter, better. But it's not getting us 100% of the way there.
You're so right. There's so much that, and I love that about the speed of what it can do. And yet, it's like I was playing with one tool and it allowed me to look like it reminded me it was somebody else's birthday and that I was in my network. And then it used AI to figure out, based upon the social graph, what kind of presents I should get for that birthday based upon what their likes and dislikes are. So I looked myself up and it suggested an ironing board. And I'm like, where did that come from? So maybe the AI just thinks my shirts aren't pressed good enough. I don't know.
Maybe because you don't wear them very often, Bryan, it thinks you should.
It certainly maybe it knows me better than me. I don't know, but that's part of where I think it's going is it's going to be able to help us understand. But the point of it is that I then have to reach out and do I would think the purchasing of the gift or the thing, and then the reaching out of that. At what point does automation become too automated? Because it could then purchase the gift, it could then reach out a follow-up email, it could then, until they buy, it could keep doing this thing, and then I'm not involved. So at what point is automation versus non-automation starting to kind of like, it can almost get creepy at times if you go down that path. So there is that, you know what I mean?
That totally is, and none of us want Big Brother, right? In any, in our personal or professional lives. And I do think that is one of the fears that currently exists out there about, this combination of automation and AI. There is a fear factor there that it can and could go too far. I I think the thing that potentially will hold us back is the thing that we hold nearest and dearest. And that is the fact that we are humans, we are people, and we are infinitely wired, most of us, to gravitate to people. And so, I use another trend that's been around, in B2B marketing for a while here, Bryan. And that was, 5 years ago, everybody was talking about the advent of the digital sale, right? That humans were going to be utterly removed from any kind of sales process, from, discovery all the way through to purchase and beyond. And I think that there are many industries, many market segments that can attest that that simply has not happened. What has happened is that automation, while perhaps people initially had the vision that that was going to be the case, things have level set. As we as human beings have provided feedback that that doesn't work for us, and as brands have listened. And I think the same is going to be true with AI. As we learn more, as we know more, as we test the boundaries more, so we will be able to ascertain, just like we have to a large degree with any trend that's hit the B2B marketing space, be it automation, digital selling, where the boundaries and the fine lines lie that are right for our brand. Because, what's right for one company isn't necessarily right for another. There are some businesses that automate selling soup to nuts, and that is absolutely appropriate for who they are and what they stand for. For SugarCRM, that absolutely is not the case. And that's where we are very conscious of, we use automation to remove busy work. We use automation and AI to help us point our precious dollars and our precious people and our precious time to the things that matter most to our ideal customer profile. But we have not, and heaven forbid we ever did, overlook the fact that it's the human team that's helping us navigate that journey. And it's the human opinion that is helping us make what we hope are the right choices for our customers and our prospects.
Where do you think that it's going to place an emphasis on skill set in the future? Because now all of a sudden, whether it's marketers or in general, you don't have to spend as much time doing content or spend as much, not that work it's going to take over, but you're not going to spend as much time doing data entry. Filling in a CRM field is not my favorite thing in the world, but having it there is something that's critical to knowing that I've got everything captured. So now all of a sudden I've got more time on my hands. Am I replaceable, or am I going to have to upskill to do the things that maybe I was originally brought on to do? Or is there other things that now I have to just go out and train for to be able to do so that, I can stay relevant? What do you think about that?
So, almost coming full circle here, back to where we started, one of the things that I believe is fundamental to success in marketing is embracing change. Like I say, when you think about the different functions of marketing, we are there to help facilitate and or inform about changing by behavior, changing competitive dynamics, changing the market dynamics. And this is no different, right? What I think that AI, like many technology waves before that, is forcing us to do is recruit differently. I want people to join my team who understand the tech as a baseline, right? Who understand the power and the potential of the tech. I also think it's forcing us to operate differently, because in order to harness the power of the technology, you have to integrate, right, your MarTech stack with systems that allow you to see those insights, to see those connections that AI can help power, that without that integration, you wouldn't or couldn't be able to do. I think perhaps the thing that gets me most excited is in freeing us up from the busy work, as you say, the data entry, the trawling through endless spreadsheets of data to try and figure out who your right audience segment is to target in the first place, to figure out what leads you should be prioritizing, what opportunities your sales team should be closing. AI can deliver that for you. And guess what that means? That means you get to spend more time thinking about all the creative ways to reach and to communicate with your target buyer. Who doesn't want to spend more time using your right brain as in marketing than trawling through oodles and oodles in a sea of data? I know I do. And that's what gets me excited. And it frees us up to have the conversations, both internally with stakeholders that are critical to whatever program it is that you're launching, but also with your customers, with your partners, to help you understand how best to meet their needs. And I think that is where, we are having to shift as a marketing team, is recruit differently, operate differently, communicate and collaborate differently. I don't think there's ever been a time when marketing functions have liaised more frequently with IT than right now. And so, but I think the exciting thing is that that's driving us to deliver on a skill set that I believe is critical to every role in marketing, and that's embracing and living with change.
Oh man, I could just sit and talk to you all day. This is great stuff. I gotta ask one question before I drop a final question. So 2 questions left. One is this is just coming from me because I'm insanely curious about content and because we've got this really neat tool that will speed up the content to help us make content faster, which means everybody's going to do that. And now that means that we're going to have more content. And so I'm curious if we're going to get into, because we're already there, we're already in content overwhelm. What do you think will happen if we're getting into that content overwhelm, or is it going to start to shift into a different way that I'm just not thinking about? How do you kind of look at that challenge, or do you see it as even a challenge?
Yeah, it is, right? The democratization of content authoring, right? Everybody's, it's isn't it funny that we've often harped on about everybody's a marketeer? Well, everybody's now a content creator. And so I don't think that this is a phenomenon that we're not used to as a function. But it's true that what AI has done is opened the door to allowing everybody to go create content. But here's the good news. It doesn't mean that everything that's created is consumed. It doesn't mean that everything that's created resonates. It doesn't mean that everything that's created gets you to the right outcome for your ideal customer. And so while I think we might feel overwhelmed right now about that particular challenge that faces us, I think over time, the good news is AI will start to learn the more that you use it, the content that's working and the content that isn't. And I just encourage anybody to stay focused on what business problem, pain point you are trying to solve for, and encourage whoever within your organization is authoring or creating content to keep and to bear that in mind. But also, I think that it's incumbent on us not to discourage, because we are in that hype phase, Bryan. And in hype comes experimentation. And with experimentation come key learnings. How big is that?
It's such an interesting time. And I could sit here and ask, I have way more questions, but I'm going to drop kind of not the toughest, but the lowest hanging fruit about, that I have to ask about you being a British expat to close this up on working here in the US. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about how you stay rooted and connected with your own friends, your family and your culture, and and just kind of close on this. So I'm curious about how you do that, especially somebody who's now living abroad recently, now learning. What does that take?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing. It very much relates to our conversation today, because I'm not going to lie, I use Siri to remind me, call home, call mom, call, my brothers, speak to my nephews and nieces. But what I will say is, I've never missed a single Christmas at home. It's really important to me to get back. I have lots of young nephews and nieces. And also I'm fundamentally a people person and I feed off people. So it's really important to me to keep those connections. But, by the same token, we joke, my husband and I, Bryan, and I'm sure you will come to find now living out there in Portugal. We run an Airbnb in summer. Make no mistake. Living where we do on the West Coast, more recently in Sonoma, but latterly in San Francisco, that's a draw for people to want to come visit us. So it's a combination, I think, Bryan, of us making the effort to keep those human connections alive, coming back to center here, coupled with, frankly, using technology. This device right here is my favorite friend, whether it has to remind me or not, to keep in touch, not just with friends and family back home, but also, friends and family here in the US.
Well, Claire, you have a new friend in Portugal, and so next time you're here, please come visit. And
You might regret saying that,
yeah,
Bryan.
another human-to-human relationship. I can't thank you enough. Thanks for joining Leadtail TV. I really appreciate it. This has just been fantastic. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me and digging in on topics that I know are top of mind, for many of us right now. It's been fun.